Mom, stay away this summer. Derek wants the lake house only for us.
Of course, sweetheart. But there's one problem. I sold it yesterday.
The morning my daughter told me to stay away from my own lake house, I smiled, hung up the phone, and sold it before she could unpack a single suitcase. Hello, my name is Evelyn Carter. I am 62 years old, a widow, a retired building contractor, and the woman my daughter apparently believed was too lonely and too foolish to defend what belonged to her. She was wrong. But to understand why I sold the house, you need to know what that place meant to me. 23 years earlier, my husband Thomas and I bought a rough piece of land beside Lake Briar in northern Michigan. There was no house, no dock, and no smooth driveway. There were only pine trees, mosquitoes, stones, and a view of the water so beautiful that Thomas stood beside me and whispered, "One day, this will be where we grow old." We never got that chance, and Thomas died from a heart attack 3 years later. He was 46. I was 39, and our daughter, Lauren, was only 14. For several months after his death, I could barely look at the property. Every tree reminded me of him. Every plan we had drawn felt like a promise the world had broken. Friends advised me to sell the land and move on. I almost did. Then one Saturday, Lauren found me sitting at the kitchen table with the property papers in front of me. "Are you selling Dad's lake?" she asked. I told her I was thinking about it. She began to cry. "But he said we would build a house there." That sentence changed everything. I did not sell the land. I built the house. I used the skills I had learned while working beside Thomas. I drew the plans, applied for permits, hired help only when I needed it, and spent nearly every weekend for 4 years covered in sawdust and paint. I framed walls with my own hands. I installed cabinets. I laid oak flooring one board at a time. I even carved Thomas's initials into a beam above the fireplace, where no guest would have noticed them, but I always would. Lauren grew up at that house. She learned to swim from the small dock I built. She celebrated birthdays on the porch. She brought college friends there. When she married Derek 12 years ago, I let them hold a small reception beside the water because Lauren said it would make her feel as though her father were present. I believed the house belonged to our memories, even though the deed belonged only to me. That difference eventually became important. At first, Derek was charming. He worked in commercial real estate, wore expensive watches, and spoke as if every conversation were a business opportunity. He called me Mom before the wedding and often told people he admired what I had built. But over the years, admiration became entitlement. He began inviting colleagues to the lake without asking me. He replaced my old fishing boat with a powerful speedboat and sent me half the bill, saying it improved the property. He once changed the lock on the storage shed because, according to him, my tools made the place look unfinished. Each time Lauren asked me to be patient. "That's just Derek," she would say. "He likes everything organized." So I swallowed my irritation. I wanted peace with my only child, and Derek understood exactly how much I was willing to tolerate to keep it. Then, 2 years ago, his business began to fail. He never admitted it. He still drove a black luxury SUV and posted photographs from expensive restaurants. But I had spent 30 years around developers and contractors. I knew the signs projects suddenly delayed, subcontractors calling at odd hours, and a man who used to brag about profits becoming defensive whenever money was mentioned. Lauren changed too. She stopped talking about vacations. She began asking strange questions about my retirement accounts and whether I had updated my will. Once, while helping me clean the kitchen, she casually asked what the lake house might be worth. I told her I had never had it appraised. That was not true. 6 months earlier, a neighboring property had sold for nearly $2 million. Mine had more shoreline, a newer dock, and a larger house. I knew it was valuable. I simply did not know why my daughter suddenly cared. The answer arrived on a Tuesday morning in May. Lauren called while I was drinking coffee on the porch of my home near Grand Rapids. She sounded cheerful, almost too cheerful. "Mom, Derek and I are planning to spend the whole summer at the lake," she said. I was surprised because they usually visited for only a week or two. "That sounds nice," I replied. "I can open the house before you arrive." There was a pause. Then she said, "Mom, we need to talk about that. Derek wants the lake house only for us this summer. He thinks we need privacy, so please stay away until September." For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood her. "Stay away from my house?" I asked. Her voice hardened. "Don't make this dramatic. You have your regular house. We need the lake more than you do right now." I looked down at my hand. It was resting on a small scar near my thumb, a scar I had gotten while cutting boards for that house 20 years earlier. "And if I want to visit?" I asked. "Derek says it would be uncomfortable." "No to say, I noticed. Derek says." Then she added the sentence that finally opened my eyes. "Honestly, Mom, you should start thinking of it as our family house anyway. One day it will be mine." I could have shouted. I could have reminded her who paid the taxes, repaired the roof, replaced the furnace, and built every room she wanted to claim. Instead, I said, I understand. Lauren sounded relieved. Good, I knew you would. We ended the call. I remained on the porch for several minutes, listening to birds in the maple tree. Then I called my attorney, Samuel Price. I said, I need you to tell me everything you know about Derek's business. Sam had handled my contracts and estate planning for nearly 20 years. He did not ask why. He only said, give me a day. He called back that evening. The news was worse than I expected. Derek's company owed money to 2 banks, several contractors, and at least 1 private investor. A development outside Traverse City had collapsed after zoning approval was denied. Lawsuits were pending. Worse, Derek had personally guaranteed part of the debt. Could he be planning to use my property? I asked. Not legally without your signature, Sam said. But there is something else. Last month, someone contacted the county office, asking how to transfer the lake property into a family trust. Ooh. The request came from Derek's assistant. My stomach turned cold. That was not a family vacation. It was a takeover. The next morning, I drove to Lake Briar without telling Lauren. When I arrived, I found a white envelope taped inside the screen door. It was addressed to Derek. Inside were estimates from a remodeling company. The plans included converting my workshop into an office, removing the wall between 2 bedrooms, replacing my kitchen, and demolishing the small reading room where I kept Thomas's photographs. At the top of the proposal were the words Kartar Lakey Parper Y. Executed by Recorate Kavarsign, executive retreat, not family home, not summer vacation. Derek intended to turn my house into a place where he could impress investors and save his failing company. Then I found something even more disturbing. My locked desk drawer had been forced open. The original deed was still there, but copies of my tax records and insurance documents were missing. I called Lauren immediately. Has Derek been inside the house recently? I asked. She hesitated. Maybe he stopped by to measure a few things. He broke into my desk. Don't accuse him of breaking in. He has a key. A key does not give him permission to force open a locked drawer. Her response came sharp and quick. Why are you being so selfish? Derek is under enormous pressure. If you cared about us, you would help instead of guarding an empty house like a dragon guarding gold. That hurt more than her first call. I had paid for part of her college education. I had covered the cost of her wedding when Derek's parents backed out. I had given them $40,000 for the down payment on their first home. I had never kept a scorecard because she was my daughter, but she had mistaken generosity for surrender. I lowered my voice. Tell Derek not to enter this property again without my written permission. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You can't lock your own family out forever. Watch me? I said and ended the call. That afternoon, I changed every lock. Then I installed security cameras and photographed the damaged desk. I sent the remodeling documents to Sam. 2 days later, one of the cameras sent alert to my phone. Derek was standing on the porch. He tried his key, discovered it no longer worked, and began pounding on the door. Lauren stood behind him with her arms crossed. I watched through the camera as he walked around the house, testing windows. Then he looked directly into the lens. Evelyn, he said, stop acting like a child. Call me. I saved the video. When he called, I recorded the conversation as permitted under Michigan law because I was a participant. He began politely. We all became emotional, he said. Let's reset. What were you planning to do with my house? I asked. For whom? For the family. Why did your assistant ask about transferring it into a trust? Silence. Then his voice changed. Lauren is your only child. The property will belong to her eventually. We are simply trying to manage the future responsibly. By taking my documents. No one took anything. Be planning renovations without asking. You are not using the property efficiently. There it was. The real Derek. Calm, superior, and certain that my age made me irrelevant. I built that house, I said, and now it is worth something, he replied. You should be grateful that I know how to maximize it. I ended the call before anger could make me careless. That evening, I cried for the first time since the trouble began. I did not cry over the house. A wood and stone can be replaced. I cried because the little girl who once begged me not to sell her father's lake had grown into a woman willing to help her husband take it from me. But grief has never kept me still for long. The next morning, I called a real estate agent named Rebecca Sloan. She specialized in private waterfront sales. I want a quiet sale, I told her. No public listing. Cash buyer if possible. And a fast closing. Rebecca visited that afternoon. She walked through the house slowly, admiring the beams, the stone fireplace, and the wide view of the lake. When she finished, she gave me a number that made me sit down. With the furnishings and shoreline, she said, I believe we can ask $2.4 million. I thought of Derek calling the house inefficient. Find me the right buyer, I said. Within 9 days, Rebecca brought me an offer from a married couple in Chicago named Helen and Robert Gaines. They were both physicians nearing retirement. They had no interest in turning the property into a business retreat. They wanted a quiet home where their grandchildren could learn to swim. They offered $2.3 million in cash, requested most of the furniture, and could close within 10 days. I accepted. I kept only Thomas's photographs, my tools, a cedar chest, and the handmade dining table we had used for every family celebration. I also removed the small beam above the fireplace that carried his initials. A carpenter replaced it so neatly that no one would know. While the sale moved forward, Lauren continued sending messages as though our conversation had never happened. We arrived June 3rd. Please make sure the refrigerator is empty. Then, Derek needs the garage cleared for his car. Then, we're inviting a few business friends for the first weekend. Don't worry. We'll take care of everything. I did not reply. Instead, I packed the last box and stood alone in the empty living room. Sunset spread gold across the lake. For a moment, I could almost see Thomas standing beside the unfinished fireplace, smiling through a cloud of sawdust. Am I doing the right thing? I whispered. The house gave me no answer, but I remembered something he often said on difficult job sites: a home protects the people inside it. If it becomes a weapon, it is no longer a home. I signed the closing papers on May 29th. After taxes, fees, and the remaining small mortgage, more than $2 million went into an account that Derek could not touch. I placed most of it into a protected trust. Lauren would not inherit the principal automatically. Any future support would be decided by an independent trustee, based on genuine need and responsible behavior. I also bought a modest cabin 3 hours north, on a smaller lake. It had 1 bedroom, a screened porch, and no memories that anyone could use against me. Then June 3rd arrived. At 11:17 that morning, my phone began ringing. I let the first 3 calls go unanswered. On the 4th, I picked up. Lauren was screaming. There are people in the house? Yes, I said. The Gaines family owns it now. There was a silence so complete that I could hear Derek shouting in the background. What do you mean, owns it? Lauren demanded. I sold it. You couldn't have. I could. I did. The sale closed last week. That was my inheritance. Her words removed the final piece of doubt from my heart. Not Dad's house. Not our memories. My inheritance. An inheritance is what someone chooses to leave after death, I said. I am still alive. Derek grabbed the phone. Reverse the sale, he ordered. Today. No. Do you understand what you have done? We had investors coming here. Yes. I found your remodeling plans. His breathing became heavy. You had no right to look at those. I almost laughed. They were inside my house. He threatened to sue me. He threatened Rebecca. He threatened the buyers. Then he made the mistake that finished him. He said, that property was the only thing keeping our lenders calm. I recorded every word. So you told lenders you controlled property you did not own? I asked. He stopped speaking. Derek, I continued. Did you use my house as proof of assets? He hung up. I immediately sent the recording to Sam. Within a week, one of Derek's creditors contacted me through an attorney. Derek had included photographs of the lake house in a confidential investor presentation. The presentation described it as a founder-controlled asset available for collateral enhancement. My name did not appear anywhere. That language was clever enough to create an impression without making a direct ownership claim. But combined with the missing tax documents and his assistant's trust inquiry, it raised serious questions. Sam advised me to cooperate fully. I provided the deed, security footage, renovation plans, text messages, and recorded calls. Investigators later found that Derek had shown investors several properties he did not own or fully control. Mine was not the only one. His company collapsed before the end of summer. Lauren blamed me. She came to my home one rainy evening in July and stood on the porch with mascara running down her face. You destroyed my husband, she said. I let her inside but did not offer the comfort she expected. Your husband used my property to mislead people. I replied. I told the truth. You could have helped us. I have helped you for years. Not when it mattered. That sentence stirred something inside me. Not rage, but clarity. I went to my desk and brought back a folder. Inside were records of the college payments, wedding expenses, house deposit, emergency loans, and other support I had given over the years. The total was more than $300,000. I placed the folder in front of her. Tell me which part did not matter, I said. Lauren stared at the total. Her face slowly changed. Then I showed her copies of the documents taken from my lake house desk. Investigators had recovered them from Derek's office. On one page, someone had written notes beside my property value, age, and estimated life expectancy. Next to my name were 4 cold words: Nadirel Pilan. Lauren covered her mouth. I didn't know about this, she whispered. You knew he entered my house. You knew he wanted me gone. You knew he planned renovations. Perhaps you did not know every detail, but you helped him make me feel guilty for protecting myself. She began to cry. He said it was temporary. He said once the new project worked, everything would be fine. And if it failed, she had no answer. I did not throw her out. I also did not rescue her. For the first time in her life, I allowed Lauren to experience the full weight of her choices. She and Derek sold their large house to pay legal fees and debts. She moved into a small apartment. When she asked to borrow money, I offered to pay directly for 6 months of counseling, not her bills. She refused at first. 2 months later, she accepted. Derek eventually faced civil judgments and a criminal investigation related to investor fraud. I will not pretend I felt sorry for him. Justice does not always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it arrives as paperwork, sworn testimony, frozen accounts, and a man finally hearing the word, no, from people he can no longer control. My revenge was not that he lost everything. My revenge was that I stopped giving him access to me. The emotional ending took longer. Nearly a year after the sale, Lauren drove north to visit my new cabin. She looked older, but also more honest. We sat on the screened porch while rain touched the lake. I hated you for selling the house, she said. I know. Then I hated Derek for lying. Then I hated myself for believing him. I waited. I kept thinking about when I was 14, she continued. I begged you not to sell the land because Dad promised we would build there. You spent years making that promise real. Then I acted as if all of it had simply appeared for me. Her voice broke. I am sorry, Mom. Not because I lost the house. Because I treated you like you were already gone. Those were the words I needed to hear. I did not forgive her instantly. Real forgiveness is not a switch. It is a road, and trust must walk every mile of it. But I reached across the table and took her hand. I am still here, I said. What happens next depends on how you treat the living woman in front of you, not what you expect from her after she dies. Lauren kept going to counseling. She found a job at a nonprofit housing organization and started building a life that did not depend on Derek's image or my money. Our relationship remains imperfect, but it is finally honest. As for the old lake house, the Gaines family loves it. Helen sends me a photograph every Christmas. Their grandchildren jump from the dock, leave wet towels on the porch, and roast marshmallows near the fireplace. The house is full of laughter again. Some people have asked whether selling it broke my heart. Of course it did. But keeping it would have broken something more important, my dignity. I still have the beam with Thomas's initials. It hangs above the fireplace in my small cabin now. Beneath it sits the cedar chest, our photographs, and a new set of memories that no one has tried to claim. I once believed protecting my family meant giving until nothing remained for me. Now I know better. Love can open a door, but it should never hand someone permission to steal the house. My daughter told me to stay away from the home I built. So I gave her exactly what she demanded: a summer without me, and a lifetime without my lake house.